The guard lifted his hand before the door could buzz. Gray Wing restricted access. His voice came flat through the glass. You cannot enter. Dr. Nora Quinn did not argue. She reached under her collar and pulled a thin chain free. A dull silver coin rocked against the light edges, nicked and bent from years in a pocket. The guard leaned in. The name was not hers. Colh Calder. The motto along the rim was scuffed but legible. Harm waits for hesitation. A nurse glanced up from a cart. Conversation thinned. For a half-second, the fluorescent tubes hummed louder than the people. 8 hours earlier, St. Gabriel Regional Trauma Center shook awake to the day all metal and steam and chlorhexidine. The operating room breathed cold air. Monitors chirped even when no one needed them to. Nora's gloved hands moved steady across a trocar site, skin stretched under retraction, the stitches small and identical, interrupted horizontal mattress. Red suture bit, white gauze soaked the faintest pink. Dr. Ethan Garvey stood at her shoulder, eyes on the work, not on her. He did not touch the field. He did not need to. He said quiet is not the same as fast. Nora tied off trimmed past instruments. The attending closed the camera port. Nora stepped back on the mat, shoulders level. It holds better under tension, she said. Less risk of dehiscence. We are not closing shrapnel wounds, Dr. Quinn. We are closing gallbladders. The line of his mouth did not change. He stripped his gloves and spoke to the room, not to her. Consistency beats flourish. Work on speed. The snap of latex landed harder than the words. Through the scrub window, Dr. Maya Shah met Nora's eyes. She had soap suds to her wrists and a grin she could hide in a mask. That was not slow, Maya said when Nora entered the sink bay. That was a metronome. Nora turned her hands under water nails clean, then palms, then wrists. She met Maya's eyes in the glass. Habit. Habit looks like something my brother showed me. Army medic. Your sutures look like field photos he keeps on a hard drive he pretends does not exist. Nora dried without answering. She tucked stray hair back under a cap. The loop of the coin's chain pressed cool against her neck. I read a lot, she said. You already said that. Because it is true. Maya bumped her shoulder with an elbow. Happy hours at Dempsey's. You will not come. I will ask anyway. See you in the lounge. On Ward 3, the post-op floor hummed in a gentler octave. A woman in her 60s sat up high in bed. Her gray hair pinned her fingers around a paper cup. The hand that held it shook not from effort from rhythm, almost pretty if it did not mean something. I am Dr. Quinn, Nora said, nausea. Some? The woman tried to smile. I thought it was the pain meds. Any racing heartbeat, heat-anxious spells that do not make sense. I have been sweaty. I thought it was the blanket. Nora checked pupils with a penlight and felt for a pulse at the wrist, the skin cool and dry against her glove. The numbers on the bedside monitor rounded up and down a narrow corridor. She opened the chart. Thyroid labs from pre-op. T3 and T4 nudged up. Not flagged. Not addressed. She ran weight and dose on her phone, her thumb moving calm. She read the anesthetic notes. Standard. Good for the average body. Wrong for a body that sits on a boundary line. She called. Garvey answered on the third ring. Ward 3, post-op hip, elevated T3 and T4 pre-op. Tremor is rhythmic. She is accelerating. She is at risk for thyroid storm. He paused long enough to suggest he was listening. He did not change tone. Storms are not polite, Quinn. They do not knock on the door. If her vitals are stable, round back later. The line died in her ear. The woman placed the cup down. Is something wrong, doctor? We are going to keep a close eye. Drink slowly. Do not stand without help. I will be back. Nora walked to the nurse station. 2 charts, 1 printer, a bowl with stale candy. She logged her note and signed. The cursor blinked like a faint pulse. The residence lounge smelled like old coffee and someone's cinnamon gum. A couch held 3 people and a pile of jackets. Nora took the corner chair and opened a folder on her tablet. The same photo she did not delete 2 years ago. A tan surgical tent sagging. 5 figures in scrubs with dust in the seams. A man at the center held a chipped mug up like a toast. Colh Calder, hair gray at the temples, a smile that softened his whole face. He had pressed a coin into her palm once outside a rotor wash. Keep it until you do not need it, he had said. His voice filled with exhaust and grit. He had tapped its rim and said the words. Harm waits for hesitation. Nora closed the image. She put the tablet down and flattened her hands on her knees. Breathe and count 3 beats, not 2. 1, 2, 3. The hum of air vents evened out around her. Her pager buzzed for a routine consult on 3. She stood. A young tech in blue pushed a cart past and lost a sterile wrapper to a draft. It skittered over the floor like dry leaves. The small sound tugged an old picture loose in her head. Not a hallway. A road bleached white in sun. A man on gravel chest opened to air that did not belong in there. A ballpoint pen clipped into soft tissue. Nora pressed her shoulder blades back against the present. At the end of the hall, Maya leaned against the wall with a stack of charts and a pen in her mouth. "That look on your face," Maya said. "You get that look before you argue with someone and win." "I am thinking about a calculation. Is it the one where you show up to Dempsey's?" "No." Maya nodded at the coin chain that hid under Nora's scrub top. "You wear that every day." Nora glanced down. Habit. Habit with a name, Maya said. She let it go. "On your consult, be loud if you need backup. Garvey hears volume better than nuance." Nora returned to Ward 3, checked the woman again, recalculated doses in her head without touching her phone. The tremor had not changed. The woman's smile looked forced now, as if wearing it tired her. Nora wrote orders for closer monitoring that did not need permission and left. The afternoon found its rhythm. Suture Bay. A forearm like a small river opened by glass. A teenager with a scalp split from a car door. A cut under a man's chin that bled more than it looked, the blood warm and metallic under her gloves. The bleep of monitors set a steady tempo. The smell of alcohol pads and warm saline washed the room. Nurses threaded the spaces between beds the way street cyclists thread traffic. Nora's hands were small machines when they worked. Line loop tie trim. Patients watched her eyes, not her mouth, and calmed because those eyes never wavered. She thanked them for holding still in the same voice each time. She threw gauze into the trash with the same lift of the wrist. Right before evening shift change, the building felt heavier, not louder, waiting. Nora put her kit in order and wiped the tray clean one square at a time, even the corners. She glanced at the clock, 13 minutes, the quiet of a hospital that knew it would not stay quiet. Her pager vibrated a little stronger than usual. Mass casualty alert, all available personnel to trauma. Her body stood before her mind finished the sentence. She stepped into the hall. At first, it sounded like a cart hitting a wall 2 floors away. Then the floor under her feet shook once and settled. The overhead light stuttered and came back to full. The glass at the end of the corridor rang like a fork on crystal. Somewhere out of sight, something heavy fell and did not break. A voice came over the public address, the vowels clipped and fast. Mass casualty incident. All personnel to trauma. Stand by for incoming count. The room she had just left felt as if it had emptied itself of air. Nora was already moving. She did not think about the coin against her collarbone. She did not think about the photo on her tablet, or the call where she had not been heard. She felt her breath land on 3. She turned the corner toward the elevators, and the door slid open as if they had been waiting. The hospital woke to sirens. The elevators opened on a wall of sound. Sirens bowed and rose. Orders snapped across the air like flags in wind. The trauma bay had already split itself into lanes. Red, yellow, green. Carts parked at angles that made sense to people who lived here. Garvey stood at the center and made the room move. He turned as Nora came in. His gaze found her in a second. "Quinn, sutures 2, lacerations and fractures. Keep the line moving." There was a half breath of stillness under her ribs. It passed. "Yes, doctor." She pulled on fresh gloves as she entered the curtained bay. A man in his 20s sat with his forearm open, skin parted neat as paper. He stared at her hands, then at her eyes. She touched his skin with gauze gentle. He did not flinch. The sting of the antiseptic rose and filled the small space. The first stitch spiraled down and took the edges home. In the main room, radios chattered. Someone called out an ETA and then revised it before the first number finished. A child cried in short bursts that said pain and fear at the same time. Metal rattled on metal at the supply cart. Nora tied trimmed and held pressure while a nurse wrapped the bandage tight enough to help and not enough to hurt. Another patient, a woman with glass set in the soft of her upper arm like stars buried in skin. The overhead light was too bright. The glass threw it back tiny knives of glare. Nora breathed and counted to 3. 1, 2, 3. The tweezers found the first shard and lifted it out slick with blood. The woman breathed with her. In through the nose. Hold. Out through the mouth. They kept the pace together. A radio near the nurse's station snapped alive and cut through the noise. Transport inbound from deck collapse. Multiple civilians, one military male neck trauma, protocol sentinel, gray wing status requested. The room kept moving, but some eyes lifted. Nora did not stop working. She felt the words settle down her spine like a hand that knew the path. Another radio voice answered from somewhere farther out. Gray wing receiving, MP posted. Military physician en route. Nora placed the last stitch in the woman's arm. The knot lay flat. The thread gleamed damp red. "You did well," she said softly. The next gurney rolled past the curtain gap. Nora did not mean to look. She looked. The man on the stretcher had a collar that kept his head still. An oxygen mask fogged at the edges. Blood had dried along the angle of his jaw and matted under the brace. His right hand lay open and quiet. His left hand twitched in a rhythm that did not belong to anxiety. Near his feet, a portable X-ray plate was clipped to the rails. The film rode there from the field. The image sat in its frame like a moth pinned to felt. Irregular white flecks clustered at the level of C4. They were not dust on film. They were sharp and mean and alive. The gurney moved past out of view toward double doors that wore the words "Restricted Access." 2 MPs stepped to their spots and did not pretend to be furniture. The air inside Nora's chest changed. For a beat, the light swam like heat over a road. Dust lifted in memory and stuck to her tongue. A different stretcher, a different sun. Mosul, a young man on the ground with fear in his eyes under all the pain. "Doc," he had said, "I gotta be there when she is born." "You will," she had told him. "You will hold her. Stay with me." "Nora." Maya's voice came from her right. She stood with a chart pressed to her chest. "You okay?" "I am fine." "You look like you time traveled." Nora pulled her gloves off and tossed them, then reached for a new pair. "I need the charge nurse." Maya's gaze flicked toward the doors of Grey Wing. "That is military. It will be a wall." Walls have phones. At the station, the charge nurse was hashing bed assignments with a resident who had 3 beepers and no free hand. Nora waited for a breath between sentences. "I need field imaging on the Grey Wing patient," Nora said. "Male, cervical trauma. I saw fragments on the plate." The nurse had seen Nora work long enough to trust her tone. She still shook her head. "Jurisdiction. We hold and hand over. Call them in there. Tell them Dr. Quinn has a medical assessment with a time element." "Who is asking?" "A doctor who has seen that pattern in a spine before." The nurse held her eyes for 1, then 2, then 3 beats. She picked up the phone and spoke low and fast. She listened, then hung up. "You have 2 minutes. An MP will meet you. No drama, no shouting." "Oh." Nora nodded. "Thank you." Maya caught her sleeve as she moved away. "Nora, if Garvey looks for you, I did not see you." Nora's mouth almost found a smile. "Understood." At the Grey Wing doors, the MP held up a palm, restricted. "I was told I have 2 minutes to consult." He checked with someone inside via shoulder mic, then tapped the buzzer. The lock clacked open and the door breathed her in. The air in Grey Wing had a different temperature, as if it was being careful. The light felt newer. A small team moved with habits that matched Nora's own old habits. A physician in ACU scrubs straightened from a chart and took 1 step toward her. Name tape read Cho. "You are the resident who diagnosed from the hallway," he said. "No hostility, no welcome." From the image on the plate, Nora said, "C4 irregular metallic density near the canal. The left-hand tremor says nerve root irritation, not fear. He is trending toward loss." Cho looked at the patient's hand without bending. His eyes were used to seeing small things. "Vitals are steady enough. Surgical team is inbound." "How far?" 90 minutes. Nora moved to the bedside until she could see the man's face. Time fell away in a slow peel. He was older than the last time. Lines had carved down from his nose to his mouth. The shape of the jaw had not changed. The eyes found focus and then drifted. He looked at her as if he had met a person in a dream. The fog on the mask thinned as he whispered through it. "Doc?" The voice in her head and the voice at the bed matched. His name arrived a second later as if it had run from far away. "Luis," she said. "Luis Moreno." His mouth moved around the shape of her name. "Mosul." "Yes." He tried to lift his hand and the tremor hiccuped and stopped. Not because he calmed, because the signal got quieter. Cho stepped closer and watched the monitor. "Grip strength is dropping." He turned to Nora. "You have experience with this." Nora did not look away from Moreno. "Yes." Cho checked the wall clock, then the door to the hall. The weight of his bars sat on his collar like a fact. If I let you act and it goes poorly, that is on me. If you wait, that is on him. A nurse checked the chart. Captain Command wants updates every 10 minutes. Tell them we are assessing. Cho held up a hand before Nora could speak. What will you ask for if we proceed? C-arm, microforceps, real-time pressure monitoring, a team that understands we have millimeters and not inches. Cho studied her. Then he studied Moreno. He did not move yet. A voice cut in from behind. No. Garvey stood in the doorway with heat in his face that he had not earned and had not bothered to hide. She does not proceed. She is a second year. This is a military case under my roof. Cho did not look at Garvey. He kept his eyes on Nora. He knows you. He remembers that I did not let him die when he was 22. Garvey stepped forward. You are out of your lane, Quinn. Nora felt the coin at her collarbone. The chain sat cold where sweat had cooled it. She reached under the scrub top and lifted the coin free. It rocked against her glove and flashed under the light. She set it down on the nearest stainless tray so that the name could be read by anyone who wanted to read it. P-O-L-H Calder. The edge caught and held the white of the overhead. The room did not stop, it leaned. Cho's eyes went to the coin. The MP at the door shifted his weight. Garvey's mouth closed and opened without sound. Nora did not raise her voice. I am not asking to be dramatic. I am telling you the time is in his spine. She placed her fingers on the bed rail and felt the small tremors that transfer through metal when a heart beats a little too fast. If you let me, I can take it out. The fluorescent hum felt louder than the sirens outside. The monitor's steady tone climbed by a single note and held. The coin lay there between them, dull, silver, pocked and real. Cho did not touch the coin. He looked at Moreno, then at the C-arm parked like a quiet animal in the corner. His voice carried exactly far enough. Prep the field. Bring the C-arm around. Microforceps. Spinal pressure monitoring. I want lines confirmed and blood ready. Garvey drew breath as if to speak. Cho lifted one hand without looking at him. Doctor, this patient is under military jurisdiction inside your hospital. If you wish to observe, you are welcome. Garvey's jaw worked once. He stepped to the wall. He did not leave. Maya slipped into the room with a tray before anyone called her. She placed retractors and suction and a neat bundle of sutures. She gave Nora a short nod. It said, I am here. Nora scrubbed. Water struck her wrists and ran to the elbow in a clean line. Brush nails, fingers, palms, wrists. The rhythm matched the monitors. She dried gowned and gloved. When she stepped to the table, the air narrowed to the field and the edges of the patient's neck under the drape. Time, she said. A nurse read the clock, 1946. Let us agree that we have minutes, Nora said. She placed her fingers above the C4 landmark through the drape and confirmed position with fluoroscopy. The jagged fleck of metal hung at the rim of the canal like a thorn. The image pulsed with the heartbeat. Incision, she said. The scalpel felt right weight in her hand. Skin parted cleanly. Subcutaneous tissue followed. The smell of chlorhexidine shifted to a faint iron note as blood found air. Maya had retraction before Nora asked. The muscle fibers separated along their lines without protest. The posterior elements of the vertebra came into view like a building seen through fog. C-arm, Nora said. The tech slid it in and locked it. The monitor showed the fragment wedged between bone and nerve root, a pale bite out of the dark. Pressure, she said. Stable, a nurse answered. 18. Good, we keep it there. Nora set the microforceps into her hand the way a pen sits when a person writes a letter that matters. She breathed and counted. 1, 2, 3. Her grip closed around the metal and tested it. It gave a fraction. That was both a gift and a threat. Light, Maya said softly to the tech. The beam shifted 1 degree and the field brightened. Nora drew a trace of traction and felt the metal disagree and then consider. She adjusted her angle by a hair. She thought about the path the fragment had taken and the path it wanted to take now. She did not let it choose. The forceps lifted. The monitor showed motion by millimeters. 2, 3. The left leg on the table twitched and fell quiet. Hold pressure here, Nora said to Cho, pointing with her eyes more than with her hand at a spot lateral to the extraction site. If a small vessel opens, I need to see it now, not later. Cho's fingers settled with steady firmness. He watched her hands, not her eyes. Pressure, Nora said. 19, the nurse answered, still stable. The fragment lifted another hair and scraped a nerve root. The sound did not exist in the room. It existed in the way the patient's hand tried to close and could not. Maya took a breath and let it out through her teeth. Nora did not follow that breath. She followed the tremor in the left hand as it eased, then stopped. Not because the nerve was lost, because contact with the metal changed. One more, Nora said. She drew gently but without mercy. The fragment came free and flashed in the light as if pleased to have a body again. She laid it in a metal cup. It made a sound so small that it felt huge. Specimen, Maya said, and capped the cup. Neurocheck, Nora said. A nurse worked the foot and watched for a response. The toes curled slow and definite. Positive, the nurse said. Pressure, Nora said. 17 came the reply. Heart rate 80, blood pressure 110/70. Nora inspected the nerve root. Bruised, not torn. She inspected the bed where the fragment had lived. No hidden gift of bleeding. The field looked clean and true. Closure, she said. She sutured layer by layer. Fascia, then muscle, then the subcutaneous. Her hands remembered the pattern that Garvey had called flourish and she had called function. The interrupted mattress lay down like a zipper across the small wound. When she tied the last knot, she stepped back and stripped one glove and then the other. She felt the relief arrive and refused to let it spill. She set her palms on the table edge and let the nerves in her hands return to her. Cho met her eyes. He gave one brief nod. It said nothing and everything. The monitor chirped twice and went flat for a breath. Then the tone ran up a thin ladder. The patient's left pupil widened. His body drew tight. The bed rattled. Muscles fired in a wave that did not stop when asked. Seizure, Maya said. Diazepam 2 milligrams IV, Nora said. Now. The nurse pushed it. The convulsions stuttered and ebbed. Moreno sank limp and pale. The monitor steadied and then wrote a new story. Left pupil stayed wide. Check pupils, Nora said. Right 3 millimeters and reactive, the nurse said. Left blown. ICP, Nora said. Climbing came the answer. 22, 23. Call neurosurgery, Cho said. A voice at the door responded before the nurse did. Neuro is full and orderly, said. 2 craniotomies in progress. No room. Nora looked at the monitor and not at the door. We have a bleed, she said. Temporal pattern. We need immediate decompression. We do not have a cranial set in here, the nurse said. Orthopedic drill, Nora said. Perforator bit. Rongeur. It will work. Cho studied her face. Then he studied the pupil that did not care what anyone would decide. Get the drill, he said. Garvey took one step off the wall. This is reckless. Nora did not meet his eyes. It is necessary. The drill arrived in a rigid case with scratches that had names of old surgeries invisible under the scuffs. A nurse plugged it in. The cord lay like a black vein across the floor. The bit locked in with a click that was too loud. Mark, Nora said. She drew the arc with a skin marker just above the ear. The scalp was shaved enough from the earlier work to give her space. She incised along the curve and caught the bleeders as they woke. Suction kept the field dry. The smell that rose was like a hot coin in a butcher shop and a candle all at once. ICP, she said. 24, the nurse said. Drill, Nora said. The bit kissed bone and sang. She pressed with a measured hand. The pitch changed as resistance gave. She stopped before the tip could kiss brain. She felt the rim with a probe. She placed a second hole, then a third, making a triangle she could work with. The rongeur bit bone and made a window. The Durab bulged at them tight and pale. She incised it, and the old blood came out thick and dark and bitter in the air. It ran and kept running. Suction took it away. The pressure number fell. 19, the nurse said. 17, 16. The left pupil softened at the edge, not much. Enough to move hope from a thought to a muscle. Nora saw a small arteriole ooze along the temporal line. She coagulated with the gentlest touch and watched for new bleeding. It held. 15, the nurse said. Pack and leave a drain, Nora said. We will replace the bone flap when we can. Close the scalp. Maya, take closure. Maya blinked once and reached. I have it. Nora stripped her gloves and peeled her gown away, feeling the heat in the fabric leave her. The coin chain lay cool and solid against her throat. She set her palm lightly against Moreno's forearm for 1 second. It was warm and real. She let go. She turned toward the door and nearly ran into Garvey. His face had more color than the light suggested. He did not speak. He stepped to one side. Nora crossed the hallway at a pace that said urgent without saying panic. She hit the elevator and rode in a box silent except for her breath. She closed her eyes and counted. 1, 2, 3. Ward 3 smelled like detergent and deli coffee. The woman in her 60s sat higher in bed than before. Her face burned with a heat that did not belong. Her hair clung in damp ropes. Her hands shook and did not stop. The heart rate at the monitor ran at a number that looked like a lie. Nora's voice was calm and quick. Call a code to the room, cooling blankets, ice packs to neck and groin, propranolol 1 milligram IV push, large bore IV, normal saline bolus. The nurse at the station did not question. She moved. Another nurse arrived with a cart. A respiratory therapist appeared as if conjured and checked the oxygen sat. The numbers lived just this side of fine and could not be trusted to stay. Garvey came into the doorway and did not cross the threshold. He watched. Nora leaned close to the woman's ear. You are going to hear a lot of noise. You are safe. I want you to breathe with me. The woman's eyes flicked and found Nora's face and clung there like a hand on a doorframe. Am I dying? She whispered. No, Nora said. You are hot and fast. We will cool you and slow you. Breathe now. In, hold, out. The beta blocker slid home. The monitor wrote it. The needle on the oxygen sac crawled up a notch and settled. Nurses tucked ice along the big vessels. A blanket like silver foil went across the woman's chest and shoulders. The woman swallowed and grimaced at the cold. Good, Nora said. Cold is a friend. Breathe, in, hold, out. The heart rate traced a smaller arc. 142, 135, 129, 122. The tremor in the hand lost time with itself and softened. Temperature, Nora said. 101.8, and dropping a nurse said, Draw labs now. Thyroid panel, CBC, CMPT, coagi. Send a note to endocrine but start the protocol. Garvey stepped into the room at last and took the opposite side of the bed. He did not take over. He placed a hand on the rail and did not grip it. The woman's breathing eased. She watched Nora and then watched the ceiling as if it could teach her how to stay calm. The clock on the wall wrote the minutes in quiet. Maya appeared in the doorway with soft strands of hair loose where they had not been before. Closure is done, she said. Drain in place. Cho is watching him. ICP 15 and steady. Nora nodded once. She looked at the nurse. Continue cooling until temp is below 100. Repeat beta blocker dose if heart rate rebounds. Keep her seated and do not let her stand. The woman's eyes found Nora again. Thank you, she said. It was small and honest. You did the work, Nora said. We only helped you along. Garvey met Nora's gaze across the bed. Something unspoken moved between them. Not a truce. A recognition. He said you were right. Nora did not answer. She pressed the order into the chart with a firm signature and stepped out. In the hall, the hospital had recovered its shape. The flood had narrowed to a stream that still moved fast. She looked at the clock and then at her hands. They were clean. They shook for a quarter of a second and stopped. She set them on the rim of a sink and let cold water run over her wrists. The chain touched the metal and pinged. Her pager buzzed in a different pattern. Gray wing. She turned and started toward the elevator without thinking about the steps. The fluorescent lights hummed as if they were catching up with themselves. The smell of fresh tape and saline lived in the air. Voices braided and separated and found order. Nora moved through them, counting in her head. 1, 2, 3. Gray wing had settled into a calmer cadence. Machines breathed. Voices lowered to the pitch people use when they believe a person will live. Cho stood at the foot of the bed with his hands in his pockets. Maya checked the dressing along the scalp eyes sharp under tired lashes. ICP 15 and steady, Cho said. Drain is working. Moreno slept with the loose heaviness of someone who has nothing left to spend. His chest rose under the blanket in even lines. The tremor in his left hand was gone. A line of dried blood traced the angle of his jaw like a spare sentence. Nora nodded. She let herself take one breath that reached the bottom of her ribs. The chain at her throat moved with it and cooled again. Garvey waited outside the doors, away from the MP as if he was giving himself time to choose an expression. He did not choose one. He fell in step with Nora without asking. Walk with me, he said. They crossed a hallway that smelled like floor wax and coffee that had been hot an hour ago. The vents hummed. A fluorescent tube flickered once and thought better of it. Garvey stopped beside a window that looked at nothing but brick. His voice came quiet. I pulled your file. There is almost nothing in it. A degree. Board scores. 2 years that do not exist. I called a friend at Defense. He did not tell me details. He told me to stop pretending you are what the folder says. Nora watched a fleck of dust turn in a shaft of light, then stop pretending. You are not a second-year resident. I am a doctor in your hospital. He let that sit without taking it. You operated today with the calm of a person who has made 1,000 cuts in worse rooms than this. You diagnosed a thyroid storm that I missed. You drilled a skull with an orthopedic set and took pressure off a brain before it killed a man. I stood there and watched you do all of it. She looked at him and saw the fight in his eyes with no enemy left to swing at. He said I was wrong to put you in sutures too. I was wrong to dismiss your call on Ward 3. Silence lived there as a thing that could be touched. St. Gabriel needs what you are, he said. I am offering you senior trauma surgeon. Full attending privileges. You will build a training track that teaches what you know. There are conditions. You teach. You lead. You stop hiding. The words did not echo. They fell and stayed where they landed. Nora felt the air curl at her skin. I need time. You have 24 hours. He searched her face for something he could name. I will not chase you into this. I will give you space and I will hold the door open. That is all. He turned as if to leave, then stopped. I am sorry, he said, not just for today, for every time I chose process over listening. He walked away before she could shape an answer. A soft shoe scuffed once behind her. The sound was careful. Lieutenant Sarah Klein leaned on the wall with her arms folded, hair pulled tight under a cap. Her eyes took stock without being rude. You do not know me, Klein said. I know you. Nora held at her gaze. Do you? There is a story that is not a story in a file that does not exist. Field Hospital Kandahar. 11 hours alone after a team was cut down. 17 surgeries. 14 lives made it to the helicopter. Command called it a violation. The people you carried out called it something else. Air settled heavier for a moment. Nora looked at the floor and then back at Klein. I moved patients under fire after extraction was denied. 2 died in transit. Klein did not flinch. The landing zone was a trap by the time someone at a desk wrote, okay. The delay was a decision. You made a different decision on the ground with people bleeding in front of you. Nora felt the old heat rise behind her sternum. It did not flame. It lived there like a coal that had waited. Klein reached into a pocket and took out a card. If you want the after-action report that tells what actually happened, I can get it unsealed. It is yours to read. No one else's unless you say so. Nora took the card. The edge bit her glove. She closed her fingers around it and felt the shape press into her palm. Why help me? Because truth belongs to the people who earned it, Klein said. Her voice softened a fraction. And because the ones who lived still talk about that tent. They carry that night the way you do. Klein pushed off the wall. Your patient is stable. My MPs will keep Grey Wing boring. If you need me, call. She walked back toward the doors. The MP nodded to her and to Nora 2 short movements that said respect and nothing else. Nora stood alone for a moment and listened to the building. The hospital spoke in hums and chirps and shoe squeaks. She tucked the card into the pocket under her badge and let her hand rest there. The chapel sat near the lobby under a sign that used small letters. The room smelled like polish and dust and old paper. A single lamp near the front made the air warm. Pews looked at a plain wood wall. Nora took the back row and sat with her knees together and her hands slack on her thighs. She reached under her scrub top and lifted the coin free. The metal was cool. The dings along its edge fit her thumb. The letters were worn but still there. COLH Calder. The motto along the rim was scarred and legible. Harm waits for hesitation. She closed her eyes. The noise outside thinned until it became a weather she could ignore. In the quiet, she saw the tent again, not like a movie, more like a map. A table shoved against another table. Instruments boiled in water because the generator had spat once and quit. A hand holding a mug that was chipped on one side. Calder's voice had been rough from dust and sand. He had put the coin in her palm like a weight and a permission. Do no harm means do something. She turned the coin once. The ridge of the letters scraped her skin. She was not thinking about a contract or a title. She was thinking about a man on a table who had a daughter he had not met, and a woman on Ward 3 who had thought she was hot because of a blanket. Nora breathed. 1, 2, 3. She slid the coin back under her collar and let it settle against her. The chain lay there like a straight line. Outside, the lobby clock ticked in a steady cadence. A volunteer rolled a cart of magazines past the chapel door. Someone laughed in the distance and then hushed their own laugh without being told. Nora took out Klein's card and looked at the number once more. She dialed. The ring sounded flat and domestic in her ear. Klein answered on the second ring. Klein. This is Dr. Quinn. I thought it might be. I want the report. There was no pause worth counting. I will send it. Thank you. For what it is worth, Klein said the people who were there did not forget you. They just did not know where to send it. The call ended. The silence returned to the shape it had before. Nora stood and smoothed the front of her scrub top with one hand. The fabric rasped under her palm. The lamp made a warm circle on the wood. She stepped out into the corridor. The lights hummed. The air smelled like saline and paper and something clean that had no name. She walked toward the elevators with her shoulders level and her breath counting in her head. 1, 2, 3. Morning thinned the noise of the hospital into a workable hum. In Garvey's office, the blinds cut light into even ribs across the desk. A contract waited where a stack of journals usually sat. He stood when Nora entered and did not try to read her face. "Is the offer clear?" he asked. "It is." He placed a pen on the line. The click sounded like a small door. Nora read the pages once more, not for the words, for the weight of them. She signed each letter steady. Garvey let out the breath he had been carrying since the night. He held out his hand. "Welcome, Dr. Quinn." Her reply was simple, "Thank you." He closed the folder and slid it aside. "Someone is waiting for you. Recovery Grey Wing." The hall outside held the warm smell of paper and coffee. The MP at the Grey Wing door nodded once. Inside, machines made a quiet choir. Moreno sat propped with a soft collar back in his cheeks. A woman stood beside him, hair pulled into a quick knot, eyes that had known long nights. A girl with dark hair tipped her head to see everything at once. Moreno's smile started before he could control it. "Doc." Nora moved to the side of the bed. "How is your neck?" "It does not hate me today." The woman stepped forward. "I am Anna. Thank you." She did not lean on the word. She placed it where it mattered. The girl looked up. "Are you Dr. Quinn?" "Yes." "I am Nell. My dad said I am named for you." Nora blinked once, then the edges of her mouth found a shape they had not used. She crouched so their eyes met level. He did the hard part. I only helped him stay long enough to prove it. Nell nodded as if this matched what she had already decided to believe. She reached out with small arms and hugged Nora with a sudden fierceness. Nora held on and let something unclench that had waited too long. They talked about sleep and food and the length of hospital days. Nora touched the dressing at Moreno's scalp with the lightest hand and checked the drain. She gave 2 orders to the nurse in a voice that threaded care and command. When she stood to leave, Nell stood on her toes and whispered, "We have a play next week. I am the doctor." Nora nodded throat tight and said she would try. By afternoon, the simulation lab glowed with bright work lights and clean tables. 20 residents lined up along the wall sleeves pushed eyes hungry and unsure. On the central table, a cricothyrotomy mannequin stared at the ceiling like a patient waiting for courage. Nora picked up the kit and laid it out in a diagonal, not a line. Scalpel, cannula, syringe, tubing. The order she used matched a muscle memory older than this room. She placed her fingers on the rubber neck and palpated the space between thyroid and cricoid cartilage. "In a room that is loud, your hands listen," she said. "You breathe, count to 3, then cut where the air lives." She demonstrated. Palpate small incision, blunt dilation, cannula, and air confirmed secure. Her tone did not sell anything. It told the truth of a movement done well. A resident with ink on his wrist stepped up. His fingers shook. He looked at the tray, not at the neck. "Look at the anatomy, not the tools," Nora said. She guided his hand to the notch. "There, feel that." He nodded. He breathed once and counted silently, lips barely moving. He made the cut. The cannula slid and the bag rose. His shoulders fell an inch. A line of color came back to his face. "Again," Nora said, "then teach the next person." She moved down the row, adjusting wrists, tilting heads, slipping calm into air that wanted to spin. Maya watched from the doorway, arms folded, a grin she did not hide this time. In a small office that still smelled like the last person's books, Nora found a package on the chair, no return address government envelope. Inside lay a redacted report that still held enough. Kandahar. Landing zone marked as compromised long before the delay. Extraction denied until conditions that would never arrive. Expected mortality for 4 patients if left in place was listed as near certain. 2 survived because they moved. 2 died despite movement. The conclusion boxed in black was supposed to say, violation. The narrative that climbed the page said choice made at a table in dust with no air to waste. She set the report on the desk and placed the coin on the corner. Metal touched paper with a dry tap. Her inbox chimed. A message from a defense address, concise and clean. Consultation requested for a medic training curriculum, civilian trauma techniques adapted to field use. She read it twice. She typed a reply that offered dates, not apologies. Before she left the room, she touched the coin with her knuckle and felt the nicked edge. The motto along the rim did not need to be read. It lived under her skin now. Evening brought a different kind of light. The elementary school auditorium smelled like warm dust wood polish and paper programs. Families filled rows and a noise that sat on top of nerves. On stage, a row of 12-year-olds waited in costumes built from white coats and cardboard badges. Nell wore a stethoscope made from foam and patience. She delivered her lines with a focus that did not break. A patient will be scared. You breathe first. Then you help them breathe. It landed simple and true. Anna's hand found Moreno's. His collar peaked above a collared shirt, and he looked smaller and stronger at once. After in the lobby, Nell held up a bouquet of grocery store flowers and grinned at Nora like they were gold. Did I sound like a doctor? You sounded like someone who knows how to listen. Nell nodded as if this fact was a thing she could keep in a pocket. Later in the cool night, a text from Maya lit Nora's phone. Trauma incoming. You available. Nora typed back without looking at the keys. On my way. The hospital lights were steady when she walked in. The hum under the ceiling met her steps. A monitor in a distant room sounded its thin song and found a rhythm. She took a breath and counted. 1, 2, 3. Then she moved. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.